He didn't appear at the start, not when the audience was relaxed. His appearance wasn't in the program. His name wasn't mentioned in the ads or the opening credits. Just in the middle of the show, suddenly, a black screen, white text, 2 short lines, "Next guest, Johnny Depp." The audience froze at first, then erupted, but not like usual, not with joy, not with excitement. The reaction was different, like someone had suddenly turned on the light in a room where no one was supposed to be. Amid the applause, there was noise and fear. The door didn't open to music, not to lights, no typical showbiz fireworks, just an empty passageway and footsteps. Johnny walked slowly, as if unsure whether he should even enter. His face was half hidden by glasses, his hair falling messily over his coat collar. He didn't look at the audience, not for a second. His gaze was somewhere beyond, outside the studio. Kimmel stood up, extended his hand. The smile on his face was uncertain, reflexive. Not the smile of someone happy, but of someone who didn't know what was coming. Depp approached, but didn't shake his hand. He walked past without stopping and sank into the chair. No words, no expression, as if he hadn't come for a show, but for a crime scene investigation. The camera slowly zooms in. Silence in the studio. A few claps from the audience, dull, aimless. A producer whispers into the operator's ear, "Don't zoom in too close." The studio loses its rhythm. Everything feels alien. Kimmel forces out a standard introduction. "Great to have you here. Thanks for coming." But his voice sounds thin. He says the lines he's supposed to say, and each word hits a wall. Because Depp doesn't respond. He just sits. His posture is relaxed, but there's something in it that keeps everyone on edge. He doesn't look at the host. He doesn't look at the camera. He just waits for the noise to settle. And the noise is inside the people. Kimmel tries to crack a joke about pirates, about a comeback, about long time no see. But the audience reacts weakly. A couple of chuckles, a few sideways glances. Because the feeling is that the stage no longer belongs to the show. It belongs to someone who didn't come to entertain. And then Johnny takes off his glasses. Slowly. His gaze is heavy. Not sharp, not accusing. He just looks. Not where the host is. Not at the audience. But toward the camera. Straight. To the viewer. Not the one in the studio, but the one at home. He speaks his first sentence. No greeting, no joke. Just a phrase, delivered without expression. "This will take a little time, but I hope you don't turn it off." Kimmel falters. This isn't a joke. This isn't promo. He reaches for his tablet, starts flipping through questions, but it's already falling apart. The format is dead. The script is dead. The show has stopped. The camera slowly turns to Depp. For the first time that evening, full focus. He starts speaking, evenly, quietly, with pauses, but no hesitation. He doesn't answer questions. He doesn't talk about a project. He doesn't do promo. He talks about what it's like to be a person who is loved, hated, defended, and destroyed in turn. He speaks about it not as a victim, but as someone who's seen it all, who's been through it, and survived. He talks about the media, about talk shows, about people who build careers on inviting you when you're interesting, and crossing you out when you're broken. He doesn't raise his voice, he doesn't accuse, he just states. The audience is completely silent. No one claps, no one breathes. A couple of people hold their phones, but they don't record. They just watch. As if the stage isn't a stage anymore, but a witness stand. Kimmel tries to interject. He says, "Everyone here is happy to see you." That sometimes life doesn't go as planned. But his voice is weaker than the studio's echo. Because no one's listening anymore. Only Depp. Only his voice. Only his gaze, directed past the cameras, into the viewer's face. He pulls a folded piece of paper from his inner pocket. No envelope. No signature. The paper is old, yellowed, the creases blurred. He holds it in his hand, doesn't unfold it, doesn't read it, just holds it, and says, "This is a letter I wrote to myself, years ago, when everything started falling apart. I don't read it, I just keep it, to remember that I'm still here." The camera zooms in, but his face doesn't change, no emotion, just presence, just voice, and every word feels like it's carved with a scalpel, not by script, but by seam. Depp doesn't give the show a chance to recover. He continues, talks about things no one in the industry wants to hear, about contracts signed out of fear, about shoots where a smile matters more than pain, about roles you didn't play but were forced into, about how sometimes it's easier to be a character than a person, because at least they pay for the character. Kimmel is silent. His hands are folded. He looks down. He doesn't laugh, doesn't interrupt, because he understands. This isn't a moment you can turn into a joke. And then Johnny lifts his eyes, looks straight into the center of the lens, says, "I didn't come here for an interview. I came to show that we're still human, no matter how they cut us, edit us, or sell us." He places the letter on the table, not defiantly, not theatrically, just as evidence. The studio lights flicker off for a second. The camera loses focus. Someone in the audience stands up and sits back down. No one breathes. The cameras don't blink, but the image seems to tremble. Not from a technical glitch, but from tension. The light above Kimmel's desk dims, not because it was turned down, but because the stage is no longer the center. The center is the person sitting in the guest chair, doing nothing but speaking the truth. The letter still lies on the table, unopened, the paper slightly damp from his fingers. Johnny doesn't take it back, doesn't comment. It's as if he's forgotten it, but the audience remembers. The room doesn't blink. The cameras are live, but the show feels like it's been switched off. The host is silent. He doesn't know where to go, and no one will tell him. Depp keeps speaking. His voice is quieter than it should be for a studio, but it's heard clearly. He doesn't emphasize, doesn't pause to sell the moment. He just speaks, linearly, dryly. Each phrase sounds like an internal report, about shoots where you're taught not to feel, about dressing rooms where directors smile and then cut you raw, about people who call you a friend as long as you're useful. He speaks not as an accuser, nor as a victim. He speaks as a witness, and that stance is scarier. Kimmel starts to fidget. He glances backstage. Producers in the control room are signaling. The console flashes, "Break!" But no one dares cut it, because someone has to take the hit. And right now, even the boldest is afraid to be the one who tried to stop this moment. And then Johnny shifts his gaze to the host. No aggression, no challenge, just looks. Long, as if assessing not the person, but the system he represents. Kimmel swallows. He reaches for a card, picks a topic at random. He talks about a movie, a new one, low budget, independent. He tries to restore the usual structure, but the audience doesn't react. The camera shows the front row. A woman in her 40s holds her hands on her knees, her face, marble. The man next to her doesn't blink. He's holding a phone, but the screen is black. He's not recording. He's listening. Depp smiles, barely noticeable, but not like an actor, like a person who realized the attempt to restore the script has failed. He answers the question, briefly. One sentence, says, "This movie is the only one where I didn't lie." Kimmel tries to pick up, but Johnny continues. All the others were well-paid reconstructions of other people's lives. None of them were mine. The audience exhales softly, not loudly, just together, as if the room is one person who just realized they've been lied to as well. And then the host tries one last thing: humor. He tells a story about an old interview, about some incident on set. He makes his voice cheerful, laughs at himself. It usually works. Not today. While he speaks, Johnny leans forward, slowly, takes the letter, unfolds it. One page, uneven handwriting. He reads with his eyes. The camera catches his face. He doesn't read aloud. He just looks at what's written. And in that look, there's more pain than in any scene he's played in 30 years. He folds the paper, puts it back, in his pocket, without a word. Kimmel tries again. He asks what Johnny wants the audience to understand, what's left off screen, what he brought with him. The answer doesn't come right away, only after a long pause. Depp leans back, closes his eyes, says, "I didn't come to explain. I came to stop being silent." And at that moment, part of the audience claps. Not everyone, but a few people, quickly, suddenly, not by cue, just from internal tension, a reaction no one expected. Kimmel looks at them, as if seeing a real audience for the first time, and then the show loses control completely. Someone in the balcony stands up, then another. No one shouts, but the camera doesn't know where to turn, because the stage is no longer the main thing. The main thing is the moment, and it now lives in every person in the room. Kimmel is panicking. He says something about moving on, about transitioning to the next guest. But nothing happens. The next guest doesn't come out. The music doesn't play. The graphics monitor doesn't respond. Everything is frozen. Everything is waiting. And then Johnny stands up, without warning, without sudden movements. He just rises. The cameras jerk. The lighting shifts. His silhouette, taller than expected. He looks down at the host. Kimmel doesn't move. Johnny walks to the edge of the stage, slowly, not toward the audience, not toward the exit, just to the very edge, where the platform ends and the steps down begin. He stops, turns to the audience, looks, and says, "If this is the last thing you see, let it be real." Kimmel sits. His face is pale. Producers are shouting in his ear. Security stands at the doors, but no one moves. Johnny steps back, returns, sits, and stays silent. The lights slowly dim. The camera pulls back to a wide shot. The show officially continues. But the studio is now in a different reality. And in this new reality, Johnny Depp is not a guest. He's a trigger. The image keeps rolling. The sound is clear. The lighting is stable. But everything is off. The studio is no longer a studio. It's become something else. Kimmel doesn't speak. Depp is silent. The control room is in a frenzy. Operators hold focus, but don't know what to focus on. No frame fits the evening format anymore. What's happening isn't televisual. It's alive. And there's no script. A viewer in the balcony raises their phone, not to record, but to read. They open social media. It's already there. Already clips. Already tens of thousands of reposts. A video with the phrase, "I came to stop being silent." Caption below, "This isn't a show. It's a reckoning." Depp is back in the chair, motionless. Only his hands, crossed, calm. No tension, no pose. Just the figure of a person who spoke, and now watches what others will do. In the center of the frame, he's no longer an actor. He's a presence, and that's scarier. Kimmel bends a card. He's not reading from it anymore. He just holds it, like an object, something tangible in the blur. Producers signal in his ear. He needs to close the segment, Move to the next. 3 minutes left in the broadcast. But the studio is on a different timeline. And then he speaks, not loudly, without his signature smile, just evenly. He thanks Johnny for his honesty, for coming, for the fact that the audience will appreciate it. Empty phrases, like gloves without hands. He tries to segue to a final joke, but the words fall and don't get up because Depp stands. A second time, without announcement, without a line. He walks to the edge of the stage, where the step is, and takes a step down. Doesn't leave, just stands, on the same level as the audience, and then speaks. All these years, I stayed silent, because I knew how it works. If you speak, they cut it. If you show, they cut it. If you scream, they say you're broken. So I stayed silent, played, smiled, until I realized if silence is what they expect from you, then that's what destroys you fastest. The audience doesn't clap, doesn't breathe. Kimmel doesn't look. He knows the broadcast is gone. And then, the first crack. A person in the third row stands, just stands, says nothing. Then, a woman, young, then another, and another. The silence is thick. The cameras turn. A panorama of the room. Dozens of people on their feet. Not clapping, just standing. Depp looks at them, nods slowly. Once. He's not playing Revolution. He just says, "Thank you." Kimmel gives a signal. Music, into the broadcast. The host forces out, "Thank you, Johnny Depp. Up next, we..." and cuts off. Because Depp returns, climbs back onto the stage, not rushing, not for drama, just because he's not done. He walks to the table, takes the letter, hands it to Kimmel, and says, "You can cut everything, but keep this." The words are quiet, but in the studio, silence. They're heard to the back wall. Kimmel takes the paper, doesn't unfold it, he just holds it. And for the first time that evening, says nothing, just looks at the center of the stage, where Depp stands again. "I don't expect you to understand everything. I just wanted, for once, someone not to turn it off when it got uncomfortable." Someone in the audience claps. One, then another. A pause, and an explosion. Not like at a concert, like after a heavy confession. As if everyone didn't know you could just stand up, speak, and not burn. Kimmel exhales slowly. He says, sometimes the show gets out of control. That sometimes truth is a format too. He tries to close, but it's clear. No one will forget this episode. Depp leaves, but not toward the exit. He walks along the stage, through the back door, not through the wings, not with security, straight past people, past cameras, past noise. He just walks. Silence follows him. The music plays, but no one listens. Kimmel is at the desk. He smiles, waves to the camera, but his face says something else. He understands. It wasn't an actor who sat at this desk today. It was a person who pulled out something that can't be put back. And online, it's already begun. The credits rolled, but no one in the studio got up, even when the music stopped, even when the lights started to dim. Everyone looked to where Johnny Depp had stood minutes ago. An empty stage, the chair slightly pushed back. The letter, gone. Kimmel still at the desk, not speaking, not moving. The entire crew held their breath. The audience didn't leave. No one knew what it was, but everyone understood. It had never happened before. In the dressing room, dead silence. No one dares speak first. Assistants hold their phones but don't touch the screens. The technical director is silent, for the first time in his career. A producer whispers, We need to reboot the show, somehow. But it's clear, it won't come back. And outside, it's already begun. Video clips flood the internet, not from official cameras, but from hands, shot crookedly, with the sound of air, trembling fingers. But in them, truth. That look into the camera, that letter, and the phrase, "I came to stop being silent." People type that phrase into search engines, write it in marker on the white wall outside the talk show's office, repeat it on the streets. It hangs in the air, not as a slogan, as a cry, without noise, but with a force that moves walls. The episode isn't uploaded to the platform, not in the morning, not in the evening, no clips, no quotes. The channel is silent, and in the network's office, they decide, releasing it risks glorification, deleting it risks accusation, leaving it dangerous. The team freezes. Any move is a loss, because people have already chosen, they're keeping it. On television, the chatter begins, not about scandal, about the essence. Analysts in studios stumble, some call it a protest, others a breakdown. But no one calls it a performance, because it was an intervention. Hosts of other shows don't joke, even those who usually build careers on wit. The next evening, one looks into the camera and simply says, "We all felt what that was, and we all got quiet." Kimmel stays silent for 2 days, then comes out with a pre-recorded episode. No audience, no guests, alone in the frame. The lighting is dim, his voice dry. He doesn't apologize, doesn't explain, just says, "It happened, we showed it, we didn't know what to do, but maybe that was the point." Then, a black screen. Depp gives no comments. No one sees him, not on the streets, not in restaurants, not in hotels. He's gone. But the conversation about him isn't. And it's not about the person. People aren't arguing about him, but about what he did, and what they now feel. In universities, students discuss that scene, some in philosophy, some in acting classes, some just during breaks. The phrase, "if silence is what they expect from you," now appears in notes on chalkboards. No context, no signature. It no longer belongs to its author. The show's crew receives an internal memo. Work continues. We'll make the episode as usual. But it doesn't work anymore. Every guest now comes differently. Every viewer now watches differently. And everyone who was in that room says the same thing. It wasn't a moment. It was an incision. People don't ask, why did he do it? They ask, how did he withstand it? Some say it was revenge. Others, that it was therapy. But those who were there describe it simpler. He just stood up and stopped being part of the machine. A new guest comes to the talk show, a young actress. She sits down and the first thing she says is, "I won't lie. I'm scared of staying silent too." The audience erupts in applause. The show doesn't control the moment controls the show. Actors who were invited for years now decline. They don't want to sit in the chair where someone tore the system apart yesterday, and they don't want to look like everything's fine, because now no one can pretend everything's fine. Studio recordings thin out. Tickets for new tapings sell out faster, but the wrong people come. They come not to see a star, but a rupture. They come because they feel the stage is now a field, and the show just a backdrop. In the studio itself, employees speak quieter, laugh less, joke less. The camera operator develops a habit of double-checking who's in the chair, because he remembers how his focus caught a moment that shook the whole country. Depp still doesn't appear, but the letter, it now lives on its own. People print its text, though no one knows what was in it. People imagine, fantasize, attribute. But the fact that it existed remains proof that someone still has something inside that can't be sold, cut, or turned into a headline. And in this new silence that has blanketed every studio in the country, a realization begins to grow. That evening wasn't about him. He just came to the right place, at the right time, and said out loud what no one else wanted to keep inside. 7 days passed, but it felt like time had stopped in the Jimmy Kimmel live studio. People got off the subway, went to stores, talked about their lives, and still came back to it. To that moment when Johnny Depp stood in the middle of the stage and placed the letter on the table. No press conferences, no statements, no rebuttals. Just silence. The kind where everyone thought their own thoughts, but no longer just as spectators, as participants. The show's official channel didn't publish that episode. No clips, no quotes, no highlight reels, no promotional snippets, no comments from the studio. The show's website was stuck on the previous episode with a comedian and bright jokes, as if that night was a system glitch. But everyone knew, not a glitch, a turn, a fracture, a shift, a game where one player suddenly stopped playing, and everyone realized, why are we still playing? Across the country, another kind of silence. Not dead. Thoughtful. People didn't write angry posts, didn't argue in comments, didn't shout on live streams. They just watched. Rewatched. That phone recording from the third row where Depp stands in the spotlight and says, "I came to stop being silent." It was slightly blurry, slightly tilted, with shaky focus. But in that imperfection, life. The kind that slipped into the broadcast without the producer's permission. The next evening, no one knew if a new show would air. No one promised. But the lights came on. No opening music. No credits. The camera slowly focused on the desk. Kimmel sat alone. No script in front of him. No cards. His gaze was empty, like he hadn't slept in a week. And the screen became a mirror. Thousands of viewers across the country felt, this is what it looks like when a show doesn't know how to go on. There was nothing on the desk. No mug, no logo, no usual backdrop. Just a white sheet of paper. Blank. Kimmel stared at it. A minute. Maybe more. And then the screen went black. The broadcast ended as it began, without words. But the meaning was clear. He saw, he heard, and he's not ready to respond yet. That pause only amplified the effect. By morning, people started gathering outside the studio. Not fans, not bloggers. Just those who saw, those who felt. Some brought white sheets of paper. Some, a cutout with the words, "If this is the last thing you see, let it be real." People were silent. They didn't wait for Depp, didn't demand Kimmel. They just stood, in acknowledgement that the moment hadn't passed. The show returned on the third day, with an audience. But everything was different. Same lights, same walls, same desk. But the atmosphere, like a funeral for the old format. People in the audience sat quieter, didn't clap preemptively, didn't laugh out of politeness. They waited, tested. And only when it was clear Kimmel wouldn't play a scene did the room allow itself to breathe. The first guest was a man with no name on the title card, unknown to anyone. He sat in the chair, placed a folded piece of paper on the desk, and said, "Nothing." The camera didn't zoom in. The sound didn't amplify. But the audience understood. That gesture was an echo of that letter. A symbol that the stage was now open not just for ads and anecdotes, but for reality, however awkward it might be. Since then, the show stopped asking pre-prepared questions. No lightning rounds. No calls to guests' moms. Too much had already been said without a script. The format began to breathe, sometimes heavily, sometimes strained, but genuinely. And Depp still stayed silent. He wasn't in newspapers, on air, or in podcasts. Some said he left. Others, that he stayed in the city but didn't go out. But most understood. He said everything he wanted to, and disappeared, leaving not noise, but an empty space that everyone now had to look into themselves. A few more days passed. A woman, a former literature professor, wrote a column in a local paper. It had just one sentence: "When someone refuses to play, you either leave or stand beside them." The column was printed on banners and hung near the studio. Someone added a marker signature below: "I didn't leave." That evening, Kimmel took the stage again. More confidently, he greeted the audience, thanked them for their patience, said that sometimes the moment is bigger than the person, and fell silent, then looked into the camera, held his gaze, and nodded. The final frame was simple: the studio, the camera pulling back, an empty chair, on it, a white sheet of paper, and above it, the same inscription. If you're watching this moment on YouTube, write in the comments whose side you're on: Johnny Depp, who broke the script and said what's kept silent, or Jimmy Kimmel, who tried to keep order but was outmatched by the moment. What matters more to you, the truth that breaks the familiar, or the show that smooths everything over, even when it's burning inside? Your turn to speak.